So I guess we're going to do a review of each episode of The Last of Us. Normally I would just review the season as a whole, or the first episode, and then go to the season as a whole, but with this being... I've talked about The Last of Us a lot on the channel, and this being a really, important video game show, and I don't know, I'm intrigued by it, and I want to keep talking about it to kind of find all the comparisons between the two, because the second game is such a giant controversy. I want to see how the show is doing and how it's gonna be able to keep my attention span, and the only way I was gonna find that out was to go back into it to watch episode 3, knowing that I wasn't super crazy about the storyline, that they continued to go down the path of the revenge plot and Joel's death and everything. But I was intrigued to see how they were going to handle it, so that's why I went into episode 3. And again, I was pleasantly surprised. So far, I'm finding out that the TV show is doing a much better job at adapting this story than the game was, even though, again, like I've said before, this isn't necessarily the story that I would have liked from The Last of Us game. If you had to be forced to tell this story, I think that the show is doing it better. Now, there is negatives. I'm not going to, yank your chain and say that there's no negatives here. There certainly is. But there's a lot of positives, and I'm going to get into all that in a second. But yeah, let me know what you're thinking about it. I know there's more people, not more, but there's a lot of people that are, not really agreeing with a lot of the changes, because as the hates for The Last of Us Part 2, even though I feel like the majority of the fan base was hate, started to dwindle out over the years because people stopped caring. I feel like the people who really love that game are more outspoken and are not as happy with the changes being made because they love the original version, which is fine, that's your opinion. But as someone who did not like the second game, I can say that some of the changes they are making, especially in the second episode, I was very happy with a lot of them. And there's a couple changes in the third episode that I'm a little iffy on, but going into it, let's start off with the episode starting off right away is Tommy walking into the morgue, or where they're keeping all the bodies, and Tommy having a little moment with Joel recently after the attack happened. I actually like that they did this. It feels like they're making Tommy a very important character in this, and not that he wasn't an important character in the second season, but him having much more of an emotional moment right after Joel's death, since they switched up him not being there. I really, really liked that. And they also showed the scenes of Ellie in the hospital because her ribs were broken after the incident. But then there was a massive change that deviated this from the game. It ultimately leads in a similar spot, but there was a big change in the show than there was in the game, and I haven't yet decided if I'm necessarily on board with that change or not. And the big change is they decided to do a time skip in between the incidents of everything that happened in Jackson, and they went 3 months later. Now, the reasons why I'm iffy on this, but I'm not shitting on it completely, excuse my language, trying to do better on that. The reason why I'm not hating it completely is because I understand why they did it. However, there's one thing that I did like about the third game, or the second game, my apologies, is that Tommy was so overwhelmed and so, emotionally invested by this. He got on his horse pretty much immediately. He tried to think it over and think logically, but was overwhelmed and couldn't let it go, and he went to Seattle pretty quickly, which led Dina and Ellie to follow suit. In this version, it skips 3 months. Ellie was stuck in the hospital the entire time, and Tommy was forced to stick around to help to help rebuild Jackson, since it was in such a wreck after the attack. Now, the negatives of this is that I don't think you get that emotional response. I think it takes a lot of that away, especially when you're kind of looking at Tommy's situation, where he is so fueled by hate and rage that he abandons, that he says, you know what, I can't let this go. I understand Jackson's in trouble. Not in the game that Jackson really was in trouble, but he understands he'll be leaving Jackson vulnerable, and he decides to not get a team together, and he packs up and leaves. Ellie and Dina were planning on leaving anyway, but Maria comes in and says, well, Tommy left, so I need you to go get him now, and then you are falling after Tommy. So that puts Tommy in Seattle, and that puts Ellie and Dina in Seattle. However, the big change here is that Tommy says, we got to go to the council before this, and Jackson is vulnerable, and it's still hurting, and if I was alive and I need to be saved, Joel would be all the way to Seattle, but if I was dead, he would be focusing on what needs to be situated here before making that decision. And I don't know if that's the truth, really. I don't know if I would necessarily believe that. I liked, if there's one thing I didn't like about the game, I like the emotional stringing along, the ability to play with your emotions. And I felt like a lot of people after the fact of this game, or who haven't seen the game and are just kind of watching the show, I felt like it would have been a little more effective if they would have got on the horse and went, quickly. However, then you kind of look at why they didn't do that. For one reason, maybe they just wanted to slow things down and give the audience time to breathe. Again, side note, the way they handled grief in this one, Ellie walking through the house, similar to how they did in the game, it's perfect. It is really, really well done. Seeing the empty house, seeing how something should be there, and it's quiet, and she smells his jacket. That is really, really perfect. So I thought that was handled great in the game, and I thought it was handled great here as well. But going back to the reason why they did the time skip, I think this was to make Jackson, the city, the community, more of a character. It gives something for Maria to do. It gives something for Tommy to do. It gives something for... It kind of builds a community and that feeling of humanity coming back that they're making this decision as a group. I think that is actually a good thing. So that's where I'm kind of like, ooh, I don't know what I would do here. But I think that the way you could have counteracted that is... They go through the group, realize that they're not getting the men to go hunt down Abby and her team, and Tommy is so overcome anyway that he goes no matter what. That didn't end up happening. They went to the council, is voted no. As far as we know, Tommy did not head to Seattle, and Ellie and Dina went first. So that is a change. It doesn't look like, at least from what we know, I'd imagine that Tommy... after his conversations with the therapist that they keep bringing in, by the way, which is fine. Her scenes are fine. It's just kind of weird. Man, I think that's all to tie back into the Eugene thing later, because they keep mentioning the Eugene thing. I think Tommy will end up joining that cause because he feels like he'd inherited Ellie, so he's going to chase after them. But I think I liked how they were all kind of fueled by their decision to go to Seattle so fast. That was a stutter of a century right there. Was fueled by emotion and was probably not the best choice, but they went about it anyway. But slight change. I don't hate it. The things that it does create is it gives Jackson more of a sense of community, humanity, and more of a character to it. And I actually don't hate that, especially since the show seems like it's going to be going for a little longer than, it's going to be going for a couple more seasons, which is fine. Then you get you get a lot of screen time between Ellie and Dina and fleshing out their relationship, which is a big problem in the game. You're spending a lot more time with them before they even get to Seattle. And by the way, I can't remember her name. I apologize. But the actor/actress who is playing Dina, round of applause. I mean, her adaptation of Dina is much more colorful and goofy and has more personality. Not that I didn't hate, I didn't hate the portrayal of Dina in the game. I think I prefer this one more. She's more lighthearted and chipper. One thing that you can kind of notice right away is that Ellie in this adaptation is it means a lot to her to go get justice for Joel's death, but she is not like overcome with this murderous hate, and she's not dead inside. In the game, she was very dead inside, and I think there was you're kind of bringing back that sarcastic, funny Ellie, even though Bella Ramsey's portrayal of Ellie is a little different. She's more sarcastic and more brash than the game version. I'm not opposed to that decision one way or the other. Seems like they're going to keep the Dina pregnancy thing. She threw up. Maybe that was because of the scars that got killed. Probably not. I'm not crazy about the pregnancy storyline. I didn't really care for it in the game, and I don't really care for it here. But I guess I haven't seen it, so let's see how that pans out. And then the gang at the end of the episode roll up upon Seattle. I'm hoping that they change Seattle to being more wet and gray and rainy like it was in the game. I felt like that was a nice, version and playground. So I'm hoping that they go that route. But overall, I'm enjoying it so far. I think there was a lot of curiosity of how they were going to handle not having Pedro Pascal on the show, but I think that's the point of trying to flesh out these new characters as much as they can, that you have people who can potentially carry the show after the fact. So I don't know if they're there yet. I don't know the numbers to see if there was a decline. I'd imagine there probably was, but I guess we'll see later. But yeah, so far so good. Not hating anything, that much. Again, not the story that I would have told, but so far the way they're telling the story, I think it's better than the game thus far. So yeah, we'll see you guys in the next one for the episode 4. Peace, love, adios, subscribe, like, whatever you gotta do. Peace, love, adios, bye-bye.